Well, the labor debate undoubtedly is a complex and complicated one. There seems to be two very clear, sharp views on the changes made by a few states, especially Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, on their labor laws. And people are looking at it in the context of the horrific news we received of migrant workers trying to make their way back home, getting run over by a goods train. We've seen this whole humanitarian crisis also unfold. So let's look at 4 or 5 points of what is unfolding before us. It has now been made clear that a lot of people working in this country, workers, labor, whatever you may call it, have had unsecured jobs. They found themselves out of work and many of them wanted to migrate back home. Now there are questions on many ends. One of them is, what happens when industry truly starts? How do you get them back? Can you force people to stay back and work? Clearly that doesn't work. We saw that in the case of the Karnataka government. Can you ask people to stay back when their experience has been that they were abandoned when the going was rough? What does that do? The cost of labor, what is the situation it causes back in their hometowns when suddenly there'll be a surfeit of people? To speak on this range of issues, I'm joined today by Mr. M.S. Unnikrishnan, the MD and CEO of Thermax. I'm also speaking with Pradeep Bhargav, President of MCCIA Pune. Rituparna Chakravarti, co-founder of Teamlease, joins me on the show today, as does R. Jagannathan, editorial director of Swaraj magazine. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Mr. Unnikrishnan, I want to get your take, and I laid out a lot of issues right in the beginning, but specifically, let me begin with the changes to the labor laws that have struck off this conversation in Uttar Pradesh and in Madhya Pradesh. Some are welcoming it, some are calling them draconian. What is your take?
The situation that the country is passing through this, there is no other choice for any government, whether it's in India or the states that you're currently mentioning about. Please remember, the economic engine of our country is virtually stopped at this hat. We've lost almost equivalent to 12 lakh crores of rupees in tax collection, which is equivalent to the entire year's GST collection is lost by the country. So unless we restart the economic engine, how will you take care of the poor people of India? So it is incumbent upon the government to be starting the factories and manufacturing and services thereafterwards. For that we need labor and we need people. And if these people were to be moving away, what choice do we have? With whatever is the labor available, we need to be starting the engine. So to start the engine, this needs to be done. That's point number one. Second is a strategy of many countries and companies in the world of China plus one strategy, which is going to be implemented in the next maybe 1 year period. We need to be attracting a lot more of investment to India to create employment for these people. For that, one of the areas that we are really lacking is labor reforms. So this is also an indirect move to say that we want to be relaxing the labor laws, not the draconian way I'm talking about, it's only temporarily suspended. We need to have the freedom given for industries to be running. If I got only 30% labor available, one of the law which we had asked the government to do is that allow the same labor with their consent to run 12 hours for him to be working. And I compensate him for it. So some states are given double pay, some states are called proportionate pay. The labor is more than happy to be working the migrant labor because his income is going to go by 50% in a month. And if he is able to work only in lighter jobs, he can do it also. Not every day, weekly holiday will be available. So there is nothing draconian about it. See, English words are used in the wrong way. I would rather say that the need at this moment to support the poor is that we are going to be ensuring that people who are available locally are allowed to be working. And you can't be staying back to the draconian are the ones which are most of the labor law in the country were made during British era. Not even corrected, we continued with that. Those are draconian for employment. So that is getting changed. So that's my first opinion. Two reasons. One, to ensure economic engine is restarted. Second is to ensure that we get more employment created by foreign companies coming into India. These are the first 2 points I put.
Yeah, Mr. Bhargav, how do you look at it? How do you look at it? Do we need the suspension of all of these laws to actually kickstart businesses? Because one of the things that I often hear is that in order to bypass all of these laws, companies opt for contract labor. About 27-28% of labor in this country is contract labor to bypass these very laws. Now, do suspending these laws improve the plight of labor, actually make it easier for industry, or is it now going to be a free-for-all? You're on mute, Mr. Bhargav.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
So the headlines sometimes hide the whole story. I went into this complete thing of Madhya Pradesh. It looks like as though he has done something very radical. Yes, he has done something radical. Every single element of that has a clause. He says no departmental inspection. I'm just giving you as an illustration. He says there's no departmental inspection in companies that have less than 50 workers, non-hazardous. They can go to a third party for inspection. If they have an accident, this is withdrawn. So there are safeguards. So it's not as though they are completely liberated. Look at no inspection from labor without Labor Commission permission. Thank God. These, a lot of them are ease of doing business, not necessarily labor. Look at the Factories Act. It says except those related to safety, Factories Act and suspended, which is true. We have often said, why should a factory inspector come and tell us how to run the thing as long as it is insured? Contract labor appointment, every single thing, all Industrial Dispute Act, it just says sort it out between yourself, guys, don't go to a labor court. Industrial relations is, it says that, look, no single union can be dominant. The point I'm trying to come across, even in the so-called harsh things, these are simplification. 80% of them are ease of business. And then we have to start. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me there?
Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing, somehow this belief that anything that is pro-business is by definition anti-labor is some myth we need to get out of. What is good for business is good for investment, is good for employment. Why should it be against labor? None of these things that have come across. Yes, you're right. Historically, the laws were so strict that people had to land up getting into contract labor because of the reasons. I think all these are fine. I've gone through every single clause of Madhya Pradesh. It makes sense. And in fact, as Oni said, this is the time for us to do it. He has done it. Well, why has he done it for 3 years? Well, we needed a 91 crisis to change the economic reform. We have a corona crisis to take care of labor reforms. I would submit that.
Okay, Rituparna, let me get your take in on what we are seeing. This has now been suspended for 3 years, and all the focus is on UP and MP. It's become about BJP-led states are doing this. The fact is that norms have been eased even in Rajasthan. Some will be eased even in Kerala. So all states are finding ways to sort of crank up the process. I know you have been pitching for a change in our archaic labor laws. How do we ensure that these don't become anti-labor? And let me just tell everyone that who's watching that labor laws are for everyone. If you have a certain image in your mind of who labor laws apply to, well, no, it applies to everyone who works in any kind of organization at any level. So, this is something that all of us need to pay attention to. And it's not just about migrant workers right now. Ritu, you want to come in on whether there is a check and balance still in the system that you see?
Every virus needs a host, and no pun intended. But in this case, I think Andhra Pradesh and UP has shown the rest of the states the way on what needs to be done going forward. I think everything that we are doing to murder the virus is murdering the economy, and maybe that's the right sequence to follow, but it's not going to be easy going forward. And I think it's quite apparent to all of us. And I think we also have to keep reminding ourselves that capital do not pay salaries. Finally, customers does. And what's happening, what we are witnessing around us is a solvency situation where there are zero revenues and full costs. So organizations are struggling. And we have to remind ourselves that there are no employees if there are no employers. And today, survival is growth. So that at the moment, the only consideration ahead of us for organization is that we need to survive this. And in order to survive this, we employers do need extraordinary support and help at this point of time. While I do agree that labor law, labor reform or relaxation may not be the only thing that can save industry, but it is a very important one because it constitutes large part of their fixed cost at this point of time. And hence, they do need relaxation. And I think India, at times I feel India has done incredibly well in spite of the archaic labor laws where we are behind by 60 years. We were behind by 60 years, even in a pre-COVID scenario. And I was getting worried because of the tonality of some of the notifications, advisories, the Disaster Management Act implementations, and the pressure it was creating on industries. I was actually worried from the perspective that just when we were trying to focus reform around encouraging job creation, are we again going back to job preservation? Because India doesn't need more job preservation. I mean, India does need the jobs. We need to look after our workers, and don't get me wrong on that. But whatever it is, whatever we can do to ensure that in future we continue to create jobs, it's a necessity. And at this point of time, a job, irrespective of caste or color, is more important than no job. And if states are doing this, because some of the states, if you notice, who have done this, have taken a step forward, are the ones who are getting a lot of labor back into the states from other places, which means that
an example of that, Ritu? Can you elaborate?
So, for example, look, UPA, if you look at the migrant data of India, UP is one of the biggest exporters of labor to the rest of the country. And UP will see all those labors, or witnessing all those labors coming back, which means they have to create local jobs, which means in whichever form they need to attract investments. They need to encourage entrepreneurs to make UP. And UP historically, I mean, whether we like it or not, wasn't a big location, attractive locations, which was where a lot of manufacturing activity was happening in any case, besides, let's say, what was happening in Noida. So I think I can understand. Same for Madhya Pradesh. Even Kerala. Kerala is getting a lot, like 10% of Kerala talent used to be exported out of Kerala. They were used to go out for Middle East jobs. All that is coming back to Kerala. So Kerala also needs jobs within the country. Like, for example, if Kerala is contemplating reform. So I feel it's a different debate whether I'm in agreement with the 1,000-day window that people are talking about. But I do believe that emergency times need emergency measures. And if this opens up a path towards us understanding the need for reform, like I completely agree with Mr. Bhargav when he says that a reform which was pending for so long, if we needed something like Corona for us to expedite 2030 reform to 2020, why not? Like we've seen that in online education, and if we're seeing this in labor reform, it augurs well for the future of job creation. And the other point I wanted to mention is that, listen, finally, when normalcy is restored, we have to create a labor commission which focuses on the 27,000 compliances, about 444 state and central acts, and 1,400 filings under labor that organizations have to do, and compress it into one core. We do need labor laws. I think we are never recommending India can operate without labor laws, but labor laws which encourages job creation along with protection of workers is the need of the day. And if
so where is the, okay, Jaggi, I want you to come in with your views on the subject, of course. Now, where is the check and balance? And I asked this question to Ritu as well. Where is the check and balance on protection of labor as well? Because we saw what happened in the beginning of this lockdown. A lot of labor, and I'm using the word broadly, found themselves out of work, out of wages, without a roof on their head, and that has basically caused this immense humanitarian crisis we're seeing as well. So now you are finding a way to restart work, and that will restart employment. What about the other side of the coin?
See, I think we have had 70 years of only checks and no balances. So what we really had was how not to deploy labor, how to avoid labor. We have an employer mindset that has been created over 70 years of draconian and unimplementable labor laws, where labor was always being substituted with capital and technology. Wherever possible, employers today prefer technology and capital. So that was your situation, which is why I like the UP situation, where they say, okay, these X amount of laws are not going to apply for 3 years, so that you start on a clean slate. Only these 3-4 minimal laws will apply. I think there will be problems where you have to improve, make some protections available, but unless you break the employer mindset that, look, labor is a headache for me, no matter what, that mindset has not been broken. Remember, we amended the Apprentices Act, made it easy for people to take on low, cheap labor relatively for training. Apprentice Act is the best way of skilling labor. But how few? We are barely into a few lakhs of apprentices. So if you are going to do homeopathic doses of reforms, you are not going to get anywhere. There is no way to unravel a Gordian knot. You can only cut it. So you have done that with UP and say, look, slash, gone. Now let's see if anything needs to be fixed. Let's fix them one by one. But let's not start with the assumption that we have to untie this knot one by one wrinkle at a time. It will not happen, because that will not change employer mindsets. We need an employer who sees a labor as an asset and not a liability. And that mindset change is very important before you get any kind of balance between,
No, but how will this change labor mindset? How will this change labor mindset, and what is the guard against labor exploitation?
I don't think you're going to get some amount of exploitation. That's already happened. In fact, employers have found a way to keep a minimal complement as permanent labor and remaining a contract labor. So why do you think there are any great protection? So my point is, we are moving towards a gig economy where lots of jobs are going to come and go, and they're going to be seasonal, they're going to be that. What you need is to build in the protection, giving employers the right to shed labor when they are in deep trouble, as is the current case. In the last 2 months, nobody is earned a rupee in revenue. How do you expect them to keep labor on? I mean, if you have a labor law that says you can't sack anybody, there will be no company left to employ them after.
Okay, Mr. Bhargav, I want you to come in. I want you to come in on the perspective of, if you see in practical terms, the very archaic laws were in place when the lockdown started. That hasn't helped either management or labor. These new laws, we'll have to wait and see whether it really kickstarts the process. The shortage of labor will continue to be a problem, isn't it? Ritu spoke earlier about how a state like Uttar Pradesh, which has a huge influx of people coming back in, needs to provide jobs for them. What about the places they left?
Yeah. So here's the point. Just the way today, and I'll give you a parallel that you've discussed many times. We talk about liquidity as immediate crisis of MSME, but the basic problem is solvency. Liquidity is a short-term problem. Solvency, they're being viable. Same thing is true with labor. Today we talk about Ghar Wapsi. What will it do? Answer is, the new equation will have to emerge. The types of jobs that are going to be required are going to be very different. That location where they'll be required will be different. So Tamanna, here's the point. This mindset, business, etc. As long as we take one thing out of our mind, if organizations are not permanent, they cannot offer permanent employment to anybody. The whole focus has to go towards social security. During the period in which they are our employees, we must give them adequate social security, give adequate notice, because seeking permanence in any form, you take contract labor, permanent, etc., this debate is meaningless now. We must acknowledge that people will come and go, organizations will come and go, labor engagement will happen all the time. We must build strong social security, and that's the checks and balance only we can look at, not permanence. So in this case, yes, Maharashtra, I stayed in Maharashtra. We know a whole lot of people work with, depending on migrant labor. A chief minister can't be a railway TT putting Lal Jhandi at the station that the train won't go. This won't happen. People will go. We just need to start creating our own employment in this state of Maharashtra, which is going to do the type of work they're doing, is going to be an opportunity for them. I think a new equilibrium will emerge post this thing, and you're absolutely right. Those who have been caring employees, those who have been sensitive employees, Tamanna, today also have their workforce with them. Those who have treated them like what Mr. Jagannath said, who treated them like commodities, disposables, are the ones who are suffering where their people have gone. Care, concern, sensitiveness helps. Social security helps. So new equilibrium.
But you have to enforce it. You have to enforce it. Mr. Unnikrishnan, can you just, appeal to all employers and those running production houses to have care and concern, and say, oh, if you are caring and concerning, your labor will work hard, your workers will work hard and reward you. I mean, you will have to have a framework in place.
Yeah, so social security is...
Let Mr. Unnikrishnan come in on that. Yes.
Yeah, first and foremost, the word of protection has got to move away from here. Because a virus, nobody can protect human being from a virus. So why should any government protect, or any law or anything to protect anybody? In my understanding, going forward, variability is going to be there in even workforce, which is there for the white collar today. It will move into the workers also. What is wrong in being a contract labor, provided based on what I produce, I get paid? So a contract labor of tomorrow, once entire thing is getting changed in the new era post-COVID, in my understanding, there will be people who can, as a contract labor, pay much more because he produces a lot more and he is willing to work n number of hours depending upon. So the variability is going to be coming in. Organizations are going to get ready for it also. Then the next question is, what will be the work culture there? In my understanding, I agree with Pradeep on one count. As a society, what we owe to people is the social security for the people at certain level and below. That is something which all of us are also working with the government to create a social security scheme, and it is at a very high level of discussion with the government of India. And I am sure we can securitize only up to a particular level, no protection. So let me remind you, we are talking about protection going, collective bargaining going, and coming with the social security. The society securitizes the livelihood of somebody or living of somebody, and then organization creating employment where there is no collective bargaining and you don't hold me to a ransom. Let me give an example. An Indian working in the Middle East today is getting not even 1/3 of the salary we pay in a factory in Pune. And the same guy is going to come back to my home state of Kerala, and he is willing to work the same way he worked in maybe Middle East. I give him a far superior living condition in his own home state itself and give him the salary that he got paid in the Middle East. So that's the way things are going to be changing. Next thing is the way we created is for livelihood. The villagers left their farming and came to the cities and created all the problem. Now we as employees will go to their villages and set up factories which are conducive for the ambience over there. So this reverse migration is not only the labor migration of what's going to happen for the next 3 or 4 months. It is going to be a permanent affair. You look at any developed nation, people don't migrate from the rural area to the city to get a job. The organizations do go there and set up their facilities. And with the gig economy having happened, the Japarna and team are really making it happen in the country already. Work from home is going to be the norm for majority of the work. Only the core manufacturing, brick and mortar system will have to be having centralized activity, which there will be locations available. So the entire labor market is going to change the color. And for that, I will go back to Charles Darwin. What he told us, when there is this kind of nature turned against you, how will you survive? It is not the intelligence, intellect. It is not the sheer power. It is the adaptability. Those who can adapt to the change will survive. It's going to happen. And I'm so happy there are 2 chief ministers in the country who could think about what is adaptability needed in the labor area in the new era. So India has got to change and adapt.
No, okay. India has to change. India has to adapt. India also has to take care of all of its people. Let's also look at these are real people who have really suffered. I tell all of you to also look at that aspect of things. Jaggi, do you want to come in on this? Because we have seen this humanitarian crisis unfold as well. Where does that work into all of this? We're talking about bottom lines, we're talking about employers, we're talking about, cranking up the machinery, them, casting off these archaic labor laws. But what about the fact that a large number of India's population needs to be employed?
Yeah.
We have a very different kind of demography.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is exactly why you need these changes in the labor laws, because without these changes, you're not going to get the huge horizontal expansion of jobs at the low to medium skill levels, because that needs these kind of flexible labor laws. Why do you, for example, today have an aggregator app? Because people do not want to have fleet companies where drivers are employees of the company. So the driver is an independent contractor with the Ola and Uber. Okay, so employers today know that they can't last forever. So because the average Fortune 500 company is from 60 years, it's come down to 20 years. So even the biggest of companies are collapsing under the weight of competition and other things. So they need flexibility. So our real challenge is something else. It is the middle level, middle skill jobs that are going to be completely hollowed out in the economy. So basically the real threat to jobs is the jobs in the middle skill, middle level jobs, which are going to hollow out across the thing, because technology can replace those jobs. I mean, tomorrow you don't need to go to a bank, you don't need to go to an ATM, you don't even need a credit card, you operate through a phone. So why do you need that entire middle structure of guys sitting in offices and other things? So banking is going to hollow out, IT is going to hollow out at the middle level. You don't need a plain Java coder, you need somebody doing AI.
No, but who for example, let me get
at the bottom, there is going to be a lot
who's going to build your cities? Who's going to build your infrastructure projects? Who's going to work in your factories and your plants? Who's going to do all of that work? And what are you going to do with people if you mechanize all of this? Are we thinking, on the broader picture, are all of these jobs in production going to move to where these workers have moved now?
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen, because I think you're going to see that today, for example, you can have a small enterprise doing 3D printing sitting in a place in Uttar Pradesh, a small town, and printing out certain things. You can even build homes through 3D printing. So everything is going to get move away from the big cities. It can move to where it needs to move. So small enterprise, small number of employees, that's the way employment is going to go.
So in that case, Ritu wanted to come in. In that case, Ritu, then in the big cities from where a lot of this workforce has now moved and in distressing conditions, and I think we should comment on that as well. Do you think then costs are going to go up there?
So I think a couple of quick points. I think one is that when we are talking about the distress that has been caused to migrant labor, we have to remind ourselves that 84% or 88%, whatever the number is, of India workforce is informal in nature. And a large part of the migrant workers that we're talking about who suddenly felt jobless because they were daily wages, they were into casual work, actually falls in that category, which means in any case, they were under no protection, honestly, without labor laws. So they were exposed irrespective of COVID and the changes that have happened. I wanted to bring in that. The second is a very important point. Yes, there will be a vacuum created in the cities, which were job magnets earlier. Because yes, whether you name whether it's an e-grocer or whether it's a manufacturing unit, they were dependent on migrant labor to the tune of 30 to 50% sometimes. And yes, there will be a temporary phase where I expect wages to go up, because there would be a shortfall of labor. However, there is a silver lining here. Just the way this entire situation has ushered in some really bold labor reform moves, the agenda of urbanization of India suddenly can also come to the fore. India has very few cities, and that's the reason you can see the kind of stress that's being caused to the cities, because they are not capable of handling the kind of inbound migration that is happening. Now, if the states like UP, Madhya Pradesh, Kerala are making themselves job magnets, investments, the organizations who are currently rushing to a Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai might actually go into the hinterland. But of course, that has to be backed not just by labor reform, by access through airports, access to capital, access through 24/7 power. But this might usher in that change as well. Just the way we saw change in labor, we might see change. And I'm optimistic, honestly, about the future, because a lot of stuff which we have been discussing and talking in debates, in forums, might actually start happening now. And that has positive outcomes for this country. There will be a short phase where we will be in pain, but we'll probably have to weather it for greater outcomes.
Well, I hope at the end of the day, we do have more work restarting, more factories restarting. Lax labor laws or this flexibility cannot be an excuse for not, making sure and ensuring basic rights. It possibly will not happen, because it will be counterproductive at the end of the day. You will then not have enough labor to come in and do your work properly either. I'm pretty sure we will have governments all around the country also sitting up and taking notice of the humanitarian crisis and finding ways to mitigate it. Let's hope we can find a more productive middle path going forward. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. We'll take a very short break right now, but when we come back, we talk about the big story, the big business story of the day. Reliance Jio has another buyer. What really is going on in this conglomerate?